Hi guys, welcome back to Mer Murder, where we put the Mer in murder. I am your host, Mercedes Rose, and I'm so grateful that you guys are here for another week. I don't really have anything to talk about. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. I've gotten a very good amount of listeners recently, and I'm like, you guys like me? No, thank you guys so much for supporting the show. Thank you for tuning in every single week, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being good people, and yeah, that's all I really got to say. If you don't mind, please interact with the show in any way that you can. Give me a 5-star rating, comment, like, subscribe, follow, all the good things, please, when you get the chance. But yeah, that's really all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting. And before we get into today's case, I actually do have an update from O'Shea Sibley's case. So if you haven't listened yet to that episode, I highly suggest it. If not, I can give you a brief synopsis. O'Shea was fatally stabbed by Dmitry Popov, who was 17 years old at the time, and the trial against now 20-year-old Dmitry Popov began towards the end of May, and it lasted about a total of 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for an additional week, and they found 20-year-old Dmitry Popov guilty. On June 8th, 2026, Dmitry was convicted of first-degree manslaughter as a hate crime, second-degree menacing, aggravated harassment, and weapon possession. Dmitry was originally being charged with second-degree murder as a hate crime, but was acquitted of the charge, and it was replaced with the lesser charge of manslaughter. If you guys are wondering, murder is classified as the unlawful killing with malice or intent to kill or do harm to another. Manslaughter is the unlawful killing without malice or intent to take one's life. Now, although sentencing was scheduled for June 30th, 3 weeks passed before Dmitry was finally sentenced, but on July 16th, 2026, the judge finally sentenced Dmitry Popov to 20 years in prison. If you guys didn't know or don't remember, Dmitry was originally supposed to be sentenced anywhere from 8 to 25 years, so 20 is a huge feat. I feel like 25 being the max is kind of crazy already because he took O'Shea's life. But in my personal opinion, I didn't think that he would get such a harsh sentence. I'm not going to lie. I thought that they would be like, oh, he was young and stupid, and his lawyer was saying he was such a good kid and he just wanted to protect himself. But again, you can't want to protect yourself if you're antagonizing people, and when you're given the chance to walk away, you don't take it. Dmitry sat outside the gas station with his friends and antagonized and insulted O'Shea and his friends for a good minute before he even thought about leaving or retreating. And when all of his friends did, he still sat out there and decided to antagonize further. So he doesn't really get to say that he was so scared for his life and he was just trying to protect himself. He had no right to be in that situation in the first place. And I'm honestly pleased. So I can finally give the judge and jury a final rating, and I would give them honestly an A. I think the punishment does fit the crime, and even though Dmitry was 17, which is young-ish, I still think that he was of sound mind enough to not make the decision that he made. And even though he can't get life, I think 20 is fine. He's 20 years old right now. He'll spend a majority of his very important years in prison, and he's going to be 40 when he gets out. So yeah, I think it was fair, but at the end of the day, nothing can really bring O'Shea back. O'Shea will never be able to turn 40. O'Shea won't be able to turn 50, 60, 70. He won't get any more years of life back. So I think nothing could ever really be fair, but in this case, this is just what fair has to be. And I think, me personally, I'm pleased with that. His family, they said as time passed, they learned to forgive Dmitry, but nothing really can ever bring their son or brother back. But I hope that they find peace in knowing that justice has been served in some sort of capacity, and they can finally move on past this chapter of their life. Dmitry's family insists that he's super sorry, and during the trial and his sentencing, he was like, I just wish it never happened. But that was all up to you. You controlled your actions, and you could have made sure that that didn't happen, and you didn't. So now I hope O'Shea's family can just focus on honoring him and continuing to live out his legacy and just living their lives the way that he would have wanted them to, happy and surrounded by love. And that is our update on O'Shea Sibley's case. So we will get into today's episode. Before we get into today's case, I would like to give a sensitivity warning as we will be discussing sensitive subjects such as sexual assault. If you'd like to skip that part of the case, you can find the time codes in the description, but if not, please listen with care. A wise woman by the name of Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And people all around the world, mostly women, have held onto those words and learned from them, as it often protects us from falling victim to someone's nasty habits. But unfortunately, we also have the tendency to see the best in someone and try to get them to change. And more times than not, that results in more pain and disappointment. But sometimes we hold on for far too long, leading to much worse consequences. Tiffany Starks was born on October 3rd, 1985, to her parents Katrina Hill and Larry Starks in Columbus, Georgia. Tiffany was one of 4 daughters that the couple shared, and she was extremely close with all of her sisters, Kimberly, Jasmine, and Shawanda, even going on to get a matching tattoo with her younger sister Kimberly in 2019. All the sisters did almost everything together, even into adulthood. They took trips together, supported each other through breakups and the birth of their children, and they celebrated many, many birthdays together. Tiffany became Tiffany Foster Starks in 2015 when she met her husband Robert Starks, and the two got married and then went on to have 3 children. The couple, like any other, had their ups and downs, but for them it seemed to be more downs, and they decided to separate just a few years later. However, the two remained close friends, not only for the sake of their children, but also because the two still deeply cared for one another. You see, Tiffany was very easy to love. She was a hardworking, reliable, and easygoing woman. She had the most contagious laugh that would brighten anyone's day, so everyone found it quite easy and honestly a treat to talk to Tiffany. Her sisters and her best friend spoke to her almost every single day, so it was very odd when one day on Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021, no one heard from 35-year-old Tiffany, not her sisters, not her mother, not even her own children. After Tiffany's mother, Katrina, received a call from her granddaughter letting her know that no one had seen her mother since the night before, Katrina immediately told her granddaughter to call 911. As her grandchildren were on the phone with authorities, Katrina and her daughters decided to make a few phone calls to any and everyone that could possibly have heard from Tiffany. One of those calls was made to her school at the Georgia Military College, where Tiffany was majoring in criminal justice, as she had hopes of one day becoming a police officer. But unfortunately, they had not seen her, and she was actually marked absent from her classes that day. 3 days later, on March 5th, 2021, Tiffany failed to show up for her shift at the Henry County Sheriff's Department, where Tiffany worked as a corrections officer. A ripple of panic began to spread through the family as the list of people able to put eyes on Tiffany grew shorter and shorter. But that ripple seemed to hit everyone except one person, her fiancé, 44-year-old Reginald Robertson. For some reason, as the days passed without any sign from Tiffany and concern grew from the family, Reginald, better known as Reggie, was oddly calm and seemed almost certain that Tiffany would turn up eventually. Tiffany and Reggie had been together for quite some time up until the time of her disappearance. The couple met sometime in 2018 while Tiffany was working as a guard at a transitional center, which is a center for those nearing the end of their incarceration, helping them easily reintegrate into society after their release. But Reginald wasn't a fellow guard or coworker of any kind, however. He was actually an inmate and a convicted felon. You see, Reggie had actually been to prison a total of 3 times in the state of Georgia before meeting Tiffany. Once in September of 2001 until December of 2004, again in April of 2008 until March of 2010, and a 3rd time in April of 2012 until November of 2018. It's unclear why he was incarcerated for the first 2, but the last time he was sent to prison was for a felony offense for giving false statements to the government, resulting in the max sentence of 5 years for his crime. But I'm unsure why he also had to serve an additional 7 months before his release in 2018. Anyway, this last stint in prison was his final one, and it would lead him to where he would eventually meet Tiffany at the halfway house he resided at. After leaving the facility, Tiffany welcomed Reggie into her apartment at the Creekside White Oak Apartments in Noonan, Georgia, where she resided along with her 3 children, and things seemed to be going pretty well from the outside looking in. Initially, Tiffany's family was wary of Reggie, and justifiably so due to his past and frequent run-ins with the law. It was weird to them that Tiffany, an aspiring police officer, would be with a man who can't seem to respect the law itself. But from what they could see, Tiffany was happy, and that was all that mattered to them. When they first met him, Reggie seemed like a normal guy to the family. He brought his own children around, and everyone got along like one big happy family. So the curtain of concern was slowly but surely lifting. Katrina, Tiffany's mother, once told Reggie upon meeting him, quote, "If you're not satisfied with her, do not put your hands on her, just leave her." But Reggie seemed to be happy as he stayed with Tiffany from that day on. Everything in Tiffany's life seemed to be falling into place. She was on track to become a police officer, which she dreamt of for a while. She was working hard to save up and buy a house for her and her kids, and she had found a family man who she called her life partner. So no one could explain why Tiffany would just up and leave her life on a random Tuesday in March of 2021. According to her fiancé Reggie, the morning of March 1st, 2021, Tiffany woke up early to get her kids ready for school. She took them to their respective schools, and the last time he saw her was around 7 or 8 in the morning before she left to go to the grocery store, never to be seen or heard from again. This is the same story that Reggie told his fiance's family as well as investigators on March 2nd, 2021 after they reported Tiffany missing. But this is where things start to get a little fishy to investigators on Tiffany's case. Just 6 days following Tiffany's disappearance at around 1 p.m. on March 8th, 2021, Reggie voluntarily showed up to the Coweta County Sheriff's Office in Noonan, Georgia. He volunteered his statement to detectives on Tiffany's case and agreed to take a polygraph test because he assumed he would eventually be suspected as the person responsible for Tiffany's disappearance. Now, let me remind you guys that polygraph tests or lie detector tests are not admissible in court because they lack scientific reliability. It's very common for these tests to show false positive and negative results, sometimes indicating that an honest person is lying and other times indicating that a deceptive person is being truthful. Many people, myself included, could be getting questioned about if the sky is blue or not and would end up failing the test because the stress and anxiety of the situation could cause false indications of deceit. But some people who have no remorse or true care about the situation or even voluntarily take polygraph tests knowing how to control their heart rate or stress levels may pass with flying colors even though they're lying. So Reggie showing up to volunteer his services could be read as only one of two ways. Either he's trying to be deceitful and get ahead of it, or he is truly telling the truth and wants to clear his name. But one can only assume that maybe Reggie wanted to clear his name so that investigators could focus on other possible suspects instead of wasting time on investigating him, because we all know the spouse is usually the first person suspected. But as time went on, it seemed as though Reggie was really there with his own best interests at heart, trying to seem more innocent than he really was. As he continued to talk with detectives, he began to reveal a relationship between him and his fiancée that was far from what other people believed, and one that could have shown a possible motive for murder. Reggie completed his polygraph test just before 2 p.m. and even jokingly asked the examiner, quote, "How did I do, doc?" He then went into another room where he began speaking with a detective on Tiffany's case, Detective Kilgore. Reggie is shown on body cam footage seemingly comfortable and laid back as he prepares for the questioning from the detective, but this nonchalant facade soon begins to fade. Detective Kilgore asks Reggie about a man that we only know as Mr. Scott. Reggie explains to the detective that Mr. Scott is one of Tiffany's old coworkers who he knows as the man who's been buying her extravagant gifts and giving her large sums of cash fairly often. But according to Reggie, Tiffany always insists that Mr. Scott is just a friend of hers and that she remained close with him after the two parted ways in the workplace.
Tell me about this Mr. Scott guy.
I don't know. All I know is Mr. Scott. That's all I know. And he been buying her a whole lot of extravagant gifts, you know, and then putting $300 in her pocket at the same time and gave her 5 gift cards, all of them over $100. They still talk every day. She said they just friends. It's okay if you say so. I just know Mr. Scott. That's all I know. I know he works up there at the job where they used to work at.
This is where investigators begin to dig into the couple's past and find evidence that there were accusations of infidelity on both ends of the relationship. However, the only person with solid evidence of being unfaithful was in fact Reggie. So Detective Kilgore cuts straight to the chase. He informs Reggie that there are a bunch of inconsistencies in his story. At first, he reported on March 2nd, the day that Tiffany went missing, that he last saw her at around 7 or 8 a.m. But now he's telling Mr. Kilgore that he really last saw her at around 1 p.m., or 12 p.m., or even 2 p.m. So now some pressure is put on Reggie to get his story straight with officers, and eventually they break some pretty bad news to him.
Reggie, right now is the time that if you got something to do with her being gone, or you know where she's at, because you done failed the out of a polygraph. And I can tell you why you failed it. You failed it because you didn't tell the truth.
I don't know who she is. I'm not lying.
Later that afternoon, on the same day that Reggie came to the sheriff's office on March 8th, 2021, officers located Tiffany's 2020 Nissan Altima. The car was abandoned in a strip mall parking lot in College Park, Georgia, a city about 30 miles or a 34-minute drive from where Tiffany lived in Noonan. Upon searching the vehicle, detectives found many of Tiffany's belongings, including her purse, house keys, and debit card. This told detectives that the person responsible did not take Tiffany in an attempt to rob her of her belongings or her money. And as they continued to search the car, they noticed the fact that her cell phone was missing. But along with the lack of her cell phone was also the lack of any forensic evidence. The detectives located a surveillance camera located in the strip mall that pointed towards Godby Road, and upon reviewing the video, they watched as Tiffany's car pulled up to the spot that it would be abandoned on March 3rd, 2021, and the time was 3:37 a.m. The investigators could see that there were 2 people in Tiffany's car, but they were unable to identify the people due to the low resolution of the footage. However, this was very useful information for them, as it told investigators that there was another person involved in Tiffany's disappearance. As investigators were left to uncover the identity of the 2 suspects, the family was left still searching for Tiffany. On March 11, 2021, Tiffany had a flight booked to go to Texas to visit her best friend, Sherry Middleton, but she missed that flight, and her family couldn't handle the constant reminders of the fact that she was missing. So they formed their own search party called Searching for Tiffany. Around this time, the family put out news for a reward of $35,000 all the way up to $60,000 that would be given to anyone that could give any information regarding Tiffany's whereabouts, or $60,000 for her safe return. This information, along with Tiffany's photo and physical identifiers, were attached to flyers handed out by the family as they canvassed areas all throughout the city where they thought Tiffany could possibly be. They searched for days on end in the beaming Georgia sun and even in the pouring rain. Then on March 23, 2021, 3 weeks to the day Tiffany went missing, her family held a press conference. Tiffany's younger sister, Kimberly Bryan, the same sister she shared a matching tattoo with, had the unbearable task of holding herself together as she began pleading to the public for any information regarding her sister's whereabouts. In a room packed with officers, reporters, and journalists, Kimberly told the people her sister was a kind and loving person and explained that Tiffany's 3 kids don't deserve the pain of not knowing where their mother is at and what condition she's in. Shortly after Kimberly's statement, Reggie took to the podium. It was noted by many people, including the detectives, that Reggie's demeanor was nowhere near as emotional as Kimberly's. He was robotic, standoffish, and it seemed as though he couldn't care less about the well-being of his fiancée, let alone her whereabouts. It felt as though he simply showed up to the conference because he had to, or he was forced to. Following the press conference, investigators requested another meeting with Reggie, and during that meeting, Reggie alluded to many things, like him possibly getting in trouble with, quote, what he's got going on, and that somebody might know more than they're leading on, and even the idea that Tiffany had been planning to run away from him or with somebody else.
Well, who knows more than what they know? Who is that person? Point me the right way, Reggie.
I think maybe she was playing or something.
Well, tell me what you think happened to her.
I don't know. I'm thinking maybe she was playing and going somewhere and be somewhere with somebody and then come back.
What makes you think that?
I found out that she take off a couple times. I've never known that.
It was just a whole lot of blabbering about possibilities as to where Tiffany could have gone to try to get the attention off of him. And of course, like a typical narcissist, he tries to paint himself as the victim, alleging that Tiffany must have walked out on him, while also blaming her for her own disappearance, making it seem like whoever she allegedly ran away with is the same person responsible for her being missing. Every time Detective Kilgore or the other officers tried getting Reggie to explain his ideas further, he just became more and more emotional, huffing and puffing and pacing around the room, and he just evaded all of their questions. Eventually, Reggie just tells the investigators he would like to leave and that he was done talking to them. But just before Reggie leaves the sheriff's office, he makes a comment that sends alarm bells ringing through the officers' minds.
Let's work together on this, Reggie.
You have to make sure they don't hit with no people upset.
Listen, hold on. Don't, Reggie. Listen to me. We're having a good conversation. Huh?
Better make sure they don't hit me with no premeditation, Reggie says, before Lieutenant Rivera rushes after him to get him to explain what he meant. But Reggie rushes out of the sheriff's office and never returns. Now, what kind of innocent, concerned, grieving fiancé makes a comment like that? Officers were wondering the same exact thing, but before they could dig any further into Reggie's involvement, Tiffany's friends and family suggested another possible suspect that could be involved in Tiffany's disappearance: Jeremy Arnold Walker Sr. Jeremy was a local mechanic who worked on cars in his garage, and it just so happened that he lived in the same exact complex as Tiffany and Reggie. In fact, he lived just across the hall and 1 unit over from the couple. It was discovered that Reggie and Jeremy formed a kind of friendship during their stay at the Creekside Apartments. The two had a lot in common, including their familiarity with the law or the breaking of it, as it was revealed that Jeremy had a criminal history, and this sent investigators right to his door. On March 30th, 2021, just a week after the press conference and the incriminating conversation with Reggie, detectives showed up to the Creekside Apartments. They located Jeremy and proceeded to tell him about the current status of Tiffany's investigation, and that all signs were pointing to the unsettling fact that Tiffany may no longer be alive. Jeremy insists that he had no knowledge or involvement in Tiffany's disappearance and now possible murder, but as time passes, he confesses in his living room that he did in fact assist Reggie in some way. Jeremy confesses to helping Reggie dump Tiffany's Nissan Altima at the strip mall in College Park. Now, this allows investigators to get a warrant for Reggie's arrest, and this opens up a whole can of worms in regards to Reggie's temper and his true character. Reggie insists to the officers that Jeremy is lying about the two of them dumping Tiffany's car, hurling a bunch of obscenities and insults about the man. And after the charges of theft are unfortunately dropped due to the magistrate not thinking that there was enough evidence in the case, Reggie goes on to be a free man. He finds himself at Jeremy's doorstep, possibly to threaten the man to try to keep his mouth shut, and then the police show up. They arrest Reggie and charge him for loitering and prowling. Charges which Reggie is bailed out on, and he is given an ankle monitor upon his release from the jail. Shortly after these incidents, detectives uncover the most damning piece of evidence yet. Evidence that actually occurred months before Tiffany even went missing. In the early hours of November 11th, 2020, at around 4 a.m., police were dispatched to a location on Lower Fayetteville Road in Noonan, Georgia, just about 10 minutes from Tiffany's apartment. This frightening 911 call was made by Tiffany, who was in hysterics. The mother was pleading with Reggie as he was scaring her, but it was unclear what exactly was going on when she made that call. But suddenly, the call ended.
You are scaring me! You're scaring me, Reggie!
County 911 operator 65, where is your emergency?
You are scaring me!
Hello?
You gotta go!
County 911.
Oh, I don't want to do
County 911, do you hear me?
When dispatchers called the number back, it was no longer Tiffany on the other end, but instead Reggie.
Hello?
Yes, this is County 911. We had a hang-up call from this number. Is everything okay?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. I was sitting here with the phone messing with it.
You were messing with the phone?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Officers on their way to the scene noticed Reggie's vehicle on the road after it pulled out from in front of an abandoned house, and they conducted a traffic stop. And the next part of the interaction is extremely chilling.
What's going on? Tiffany, come on. So tell me what's going on. We're just trying to figure out everything, okay?
I can't say nothing. I can't.
Why can't you say anything?
He'll kill me if I say anything.
Tiffany told officers right there on November 11th, 2020 at 4:48 a.m. that if she spoke to them about what Reggie just did to her, he would kill her. I have absolutely no idea why officers let Reggie go home with Tiffany after that statement, but later in the body cam footage, you can see Reggie explaining to the officers that he allegedly caught Tiffany cheating. But Tiffany refuses to speak to the officers or give them any more information. Later in the body cam footage, we can see Reggie holding Tiffany as she cries in his arms before officers let them go to, I guess, figure out their domestic dispute on their own. After discovering this previous incident and returning to the abandoned house which held the crime, current investigators arrest Reggie on April 21st, 2021. It is now 7 weeks since Tiffany went missing. They charge him with kidnapping and aggravated assault for the incident that took place just 4 months prior. Reggie confessed to what took place early that morning, and the crime scene painted the same picture. Reggie took Tiffany to that abandoned house in November of 2020. He blindfolded her, zip-tied her to a chair, and threatened her with a gun, the bullet holes still visible in the walls and the shell casing still on the floor. Reggie was held without bond, and this allowed detectives more time to get as much evidence as they needed without fear of him being back on the streets. They discovered receipts for the zip ties and cables purchased just the day before the kidnapping and assault in November of 2020. And this is where the walls began to close in on Reggie. Detective Kilgore revealed to Reggie that they knew everything regarding the kidnapping and assault, and he pleaded with Reggie to tell him the truth about what happened on March 1st, 2021, the last time anyone ever saw Tiffany. Reggie denied everything. He denied knowing where Tiffany was, he denied ever doing anything, and chillingly enough, he made this statement here.
Pretty sure she would have told the police that he kidnapped me, he did this and that or whatever.
No, what she said was I keep talking to kill me.
No, she did. In that case, they should lock me up right there then.
I agree.
If that was the case.
I agree.
But I had kidnapped her.
For the first and only time in this entire case, I would have to agree with Reggie. Those officers from the incident in November should have definitely locked him up right then and there, because if they had done so, Tiffany would have been safe a long time before we even got to this point. You guys are probably wondering what Tiffany's family thought after this incident in November. Well, like most abuse victims, Tiffany didn't tell her family about any of this. She didn't tell her mother, her father, her sisters, not even her best friend whom she spoke to every single day. Tiffany was afraid for her life, and unfortunately, she was right to feel that way. Weeks turned to months and then to years as Reggie sat in jail for the kidnapping and assault of Tiffany in November. Her family sitting and waiting for some sort of breakthrough in her case, and one day it begins. Investigator Stacey Beckham is put on Tiffany's case, and he is able to assemble a clear story about Tiffany and Reggie's relationship, as well as gather more evidence regarding Tiffany's disappearance and the events leading up to it. Detective Beckham is able to retrieve Reggie's phone and listen to Reggie's conversations with Tiffany. Although Tiffany's phone was never recovered and Reggie deleted tons of texts between the couple, he forgot to delete the audio messages that the couple shared, as they were stored in a separate location. Those audio recordings revealed a much more toxic and disturbing relationship than what the couple pretended to have.
I don't know how I keep managing it, but I keep holding my cool with your man. But at some point, it's gonna be a breaking point. You keep poking me and poking me and poking what you think gonna happen.
I don't know where we headed right now. I'm really not even focused on this relationship. I'm just pretty much trying to get all my together, so that in the event that we don't make it, I'm not stuck. I'm not going to stick around forever wasting my time.
You don't understand how much I love you and how much I've been in love. Never been in love like this before. This relationship is toxic. It's toxic because of you making it toxic.
Investigators also uncovered a text thread between the two from February 23rd, 2021, just a week before Tiffany was reported missing. And just a quick warning, this is where we will be discussing sexual abuse and violence, such as rape, so if you guys are sensitive to that subject, please skip to the time code in the description. Everyone else, please listen with care. In the text thread, Tiffany is explaining to Reggie that she did not like what he did to her the night prior, that she told him no, and he forced himself on her. And according to the text that Tiffany sent after this wasn't the first time that she had to have this conversation with Reggie about him forcing himself on her. She said, quote, "When you do those things, that doesn't sit right with my soul. It makes me look at you differently. And when I start looking at you differently, I start reevaluating the relationship." Investigators later uncovered an audio message following this text chain.
When I apologize to you for taking it like that other night, because I said I realized it really did send you somewhere. Well, you know what I'm saying? Now, you say rape, okay, rape. Rape is when you take on willing, and I even told you, no, I'm calling it what it is. Yes, it was rape. Okay, I raped.
Reggie, in a disgustingly dismissive, minimizing, and mocking tone, admits to Tiffany on the audio recording that he did in fact rape her. And I want to just interject really quick here and remind you all that rape is an act of non-consensual sexual violence, and a relationship does not dissolve that fact. A relationship does not equate to entitlement to your body, and consent is not guaranteed just because you are in a relationship with someone. Do not let anybody ever convince you of those things. Nothing pisses me off more than hearing abusers that don't understand or downplay the fact that they assaulted their partner. Having to coerce, pressure, or beg your partner for sex is rape. If they are asleep, unconscious, or extremely intoxicated and cannot verbally consent, that's rape. If they are mentally disabled or do not understand what you are asking for and you do it anyway, that is rape. And if your partner changes their mind or simply isn't in the mood anymore and you force yourself on them, violently or not, that is rape. Point blank, period. There is no gray area to rape just because you're in a relationship. Stop acting f***ing stupid. And rape doesn't always have to be extremely violent to still count as rape. I think that's a lot of where the alleged confusion comes in, because rape is such a harsh word and has such a serious stigma surrounding it, deservedly so. So abusers try their best to distance themselves from the word and chalk up their actions to something less aggressive. But the feeling that victims are left with after assault, whether it's violent or not, is the same feeling that everyone who has ever experienced sexual assault has felt. So yes, relationship or not, love or not, rape is rape. No one has a right to your body. And I want you guys to remember that and always believe in it. And don't let anyone manipulate you or try to gaslight you into thinking that you owe them anything, because you don't owe anybody anything, okay? When it comes to your body and protecting yourself, you don't owe anybody a damn thing. So don't ever forget that. Okay, so now that I got that off my chest, we can continue with the case. So, upon Reginald's confession of sexual abuse to Tiffany, investigators were able to add charges for rape, felony and malice murder, concealing a death, and fraud, as it was discovered on ATM surveillance that Reggie was using Tiffany's card and withdrawing cash from her account after she went missing. And do you guys know who else was seen on the ATM surveillance in the passenger seat of Reggie's car? Jeremy Walker. Mr. I don't know anything, and all I did was help dump the car. So investigators circled back to Jeremy and charged him with his involvement as well. Jeremy was much more involved than what he led previous investigators to believe, as he was not only seen on ATM surveillance with Reggie, but he was also seen on hardware store surveillance accompanying Reggie as the two purchased a shovel and bolt cutters. Jeremy's phone records also indicated that he was making phone calls regarding wood chippers and tools, all assumed to be used to dismember and discard Tiffany's body. And I'm sorry to cut in here, but where the hell do murderers find these people? Like, is there some sort of sicko convention that happens in every town, or like a subreddit for murderers and accomplices? Because you have to have an extremely dark and twisted mind and absolutely nothing going on in your life if your neighbor can just come to you and come to your house and ask you to help dismember and hide his fiance's body. The fiance that was your neighbor first. Reggie moved into her place. You made friends with her fiance, your neighbor, and you're helping this random man that you just met dismember and hide his fiance's body, who you know has kids. Like, you live next to this lady. That is insane to me. But anyway, Reginald Robertson is officially charged with 10 counts: kidnapping, burglary in the first degree, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, rape, concealing the death of another, fraud, theft by taking, forgery, and malice murder. Jeremy Walker was charged with concealing a death and theft by taking, and the two were taken to trial in October of 2025. During the trial, Reggie's own half-brother took to the stand and told the jury that not only was Reggie driving Tiffany's car around just days after her disappearance, but that Reggie looked him in the eye and told him himself that Tiffany was not coming back. And Reggie's half-brother wasn't even the only relative of his to testify at court. His cousin later took the stand and told the courtroom that Reggie confided in him at one point following Tiffany's disappearance. Reggie told him that he tased Tiffany until he fell unconscious, bound her with duct tape, and then drove her to an undisclosed location where he shot her in the head with her own gun that she owned from her job. His uncle also testified and told the court that Reggie offered him $1,000 to help provide him with an alibi. At one point in the trial, Tiffany's stepfather, Adrian Hill, took the stand. Adrian told the courtroom that one day he came to Tiffany's apartment shortly after her disappearance and noticed her neighbor, Jeremy Walker, outside in the parking lot. Adrian approached Jeremy to ask him about Tiffany's whereabouts, and strangely enough, Jeremy replied with, "Tiffany is no longer with us." This alarmed Tiffany's stepfather, and he tried his best to get Jeremy to explain further, but Walker simply became irate and agitated before walking away from the man. Tiffany's best friend Sherry, the woman she was supposed to visit in Texas on March 11th, also took the stand. Sherry testified to the remark that Tiffany once made about how Reggie was scaring her because he began tracking her movements and tapping her cell phone, monitoring all her conversations. Tiffany told her best friend, quote, "He'll be the one to kill me. He's mentally f***ed up." Tiffany's family was in the courtroom the entire 2 weeks of the trial, and all the evidence and testimonies were unbearable for them. Because up until this point, all they had were assumptions about what could have happened to Tiffany. The heartbreaking fact that Tiffany was in fact dead devastated the family. They prayed every single day outside of the courtroom for justice, and after the jury deliberated for only 6 hours after closing arguments, their prayers were finally answered. The jury returned to the courtroom and delivered a guilty verdict on every single charge given to Reginald Robertson, even the count for murder, which is usually very hard to determine without a body. But the overwhelming evidence and incriminating testimonies were more than enough to find Reggie guilty for the murder of Tiffany Foster Starks. Now, for Reggie's accomplice, Jeremy Walker, he unfortunately was found not guilty on the count of concealing a death, which makes absolutely no sense to me because the man literally told her stepfather that she was no longer alive. I guess without a body and forensic evidence, the prosecution was unable to prove without reasonable doubt that Jeremy actually did anything to Tiffany's body, but he definitely knew about her death, hence concealing it. However, fortunately, the jury did find Walker guilty on the charge of theft by taking, as he is proven to be accompanying Reggie as they stole and abandoned Tiffany's car in the College Park strip mall parking lot. After the trial, a few of the jury members spoke to journalists and reporters, explaining to them that among all the evidence, it was also thanks to Reggie's behavior in the courtroom that allowed them to find him guilty, as many times throughout the trial they found themselves uncomfortable and unsettled as Reggie stared them down. Tiffany's family couldn't contain their excitement and gratitude as the jury read out the guilty verdicts for the two men. They could feel nothing but relief, and in her sister Jasmine's words, it felt as though Tiffany, quote, got her voice back. On October 30th, 2025, the same day as the conclusion of the trial and jury verdict, both men were sentenced to their time in prison. Jeremy Walker was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the role in Tiffany's disappearance. Reginald Robertson was asked if he had any final words before he was sentenced, and like a coward, he declined the offer. So the court proceeded with his sentencing, and he was given 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole and an additional 80 years in prison. Following the sentencing, Tiffany's sister Kimberly took to the stand to thank the judge for his decision in giving Reggie life.
This has been a very trying time for me and my family. He didn't just take away a sister, he took away a mother and a daughter and an aunt. To go these 4 years not knowing where she is, it's like a cloud has been lifted off of us today. Our prayers have been answered.
Following Kimberly's victim impact statement, Tiffany's oldest son, Tavondre, took to the podium.
I'm Tiffany's oldest son. I basically had to go 4 years growing up without my mother. I'm not really happy about the verdict. I would be more happier knowing where my mom is.
On December 13th, 2022, Tiffany and her sister's father, Larry Starks, actually passed away at the age of 65 before he ever got closure or found out what happened to his daughter. The family says his health took a drastic decline following the constant stress surrounding Tiffany's disappearance. It is absolutely devastating for the family to have no closure about what truly happened to Tiffany or the whereabouts of her body. All they want is to be able to give their mother, daughter, and sister a proper burial. The closest thing to a body that has ever been revealed to the family and the public was the discovery of a burnt wood chipper off of Cofield Road in Noonan, Georgia. Investigators used cadaver dogs to search the area of Cofield Road, and that is where they found the burnt wood chipper containing bone fragments and articles of clothing. No DNA was able to be retrieved from the bone fragments or clothing, but it is highly suggested that this is the wood chipper used to dismember and dispose of Tiffany's body. Neither Reggie or Jeremy have made any statements regarding the location of Tiffany's body or where the crime even took place, in an effort to help uncover some sort of remains. But it does not take away from the fact that justice was served. Jeremy Walker will sit in Rogers State Prison in Reidsville, Georgia for the next 10 years of his life. He's 50 or almost 50 years old now, so he'll probably be released when he's about 59 or 60 years old, unless someone has other plans for him within the prison walls. But Reginald Robertson, on the other hand, will sit in Macon State Prison in Oglethorpe, Georgia for the rest of his natural-born life. Now, before I get into the next part of our case, I would like us to take a moment to remember Tiffany Starks. Tiffany Foster Starks was a hard-working, loving, kind, and thoughtful daughter, sister, and mother of 3. Tiffany was able to make any and everyone laugh regardless of the kind of day they were having, and was the light that lit up everybody's lives. She cared for people and loved them unconditionally, always trying to see the best in everyone around her, which is why I assume she wanted to be a police officer, because she just wanted to help and advocate for those who needed it the most. Tiffany leaves behind 3 beautiful children, 3 loving sisters, her amazing mother and stepfather, and dozens of friends and family members who have to navigate a new normal and version of life that holds only her memory. I hope that one day they all can find peace and can at least find comfort in the fact that Tiffany has her father Larry to keep her company as the two watch over them and wait for them all to be reunited one day. So this is the part of the pod where I leave you guys with some resources that may be useful to you or someone you love. So you can call 800-799-7233 or text BEGIN to 88788 to reach the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You can also call 800-656-4673 for the National Sexual Assault Hotline. So we're now in the part of the case where I give my police/detective rating and my judge/jury rating. For the police rating, I am going to give 2 separate ones because I'm giving one for the detectives in the beginning of the case, and then one for the second detective, Detective Beckham, who took over Tiffany's case and brought us to our conclusion. For the first half, I'm giving them a D because I feel like there was so much more that could have been done and so much that could have been avoided. Even though I feel like they were trying somewhat of their best just wasn't good enough. I feel like once the walls really started to close in on Reggie and he became really fragile and unstable, like when he was losing his mind in the precinct, I just feel like they had an opportunity then to do something. I'm imagining that Reggie wasn't able to hold his secret in as the weeks passed, and that's why he began talking to the people in his family and trying to get alibis and get help for what he did. And then I think he grew increasingly more nervous as he realized that they weren't really willing to help him and be accomplices to his murder. And I feel like it was around that time that the officers could see that something was bothering Reggie, and they really could have been quicker on their feet and did a little bit more digging. I feel like they could have wired like Jeremy Walker to set up a conversation with the two and get them to confess what happened, or say, oh, remember when we did this and that at this place, like get some sort of information. Like I feel like they just weren't thinking enough. Like if I were in their shoes, I would have offered Jeremy a plea deal. I mean, the man only got 10 years, so who knows? He could have gotten a plea deal for immunity or something. And they could have been like, hey, we're going to wire you up, try to have this conversation with this man and talk about whatever. I feel like that is also kind of suspicious because I feel like two criminals talking about what they just did, unless they're sick and they're bragging about it, I feel like one of them would be tipped off like, why are you trying to ask me questions about what we just did when you know everything? But I don't know, I feel like it could have just been framed in some sort of way for them to get more information, because I feel like a lot more closure could have been given to this family. And then I don't know if they really spoke to any of Reggie's family members, but I feel like the second that officers showed up to any of those family members' houses, they would have been nervous, especially the ones that did know, like the cousin and the uncle. I feel like they would have sang like birds. There's no way. I don't know if they did or didn't go and confront his family. Maybe they couldn't find his family. I'm not sure what it was, but I feel like they definitely could have went that route as well. And I discovered in the video that I watched about Tiffany's case that Reggie actually lost his own mother in a violent altercation. I guess she was in an argument or some sort of altercation with this woman, and then she was stabbed and eventually passed away. So maybe if they spoke to his family and got insight about that, they could have appealed to his more empathetic side and been like, oh, we understand that you lost your mom. We wouldn't want any other children feeling the same way that you felt. We wouldn't want Tiffany's children feeling the way that you felt. We don't want your kids to have to feel like losing their parent to you being in the system. I feel like they could have done so much more. But there's always shoulda, coulda, wouldas in true crime cases, and there's really nothing I can give them besides a D. But I will say that Officer Beckham, Detective Beckham, gets an A+ for his work in the case. Detective Beckham swore to Tiffany's family that he would get her the justice that she deserved, and he absolutely delivered on that promise. And it may have been overwhelming and exhausting, but at the end of the day, he truly cared about getting Tiffany and her family the justice that they deserved, and it shows in the work that he put into the case and the results that we ended up with. So I would say good job to Detective Beckham and A+ for his work. So now we're on the judge and jury rating, and I feel as though I'm going to give the judge and jury a C+. Now I understand there has to be not a shred of reasonable doubt to find somebody guilty, but I just cannot comprehend how they didn't think that Jeremy was guilty of concealing Tiffany's death. Like, why else would this man be riding with Reggie to the ATM using Tiffany's card, I think in her car, I think they were in her car, and then they dump her car? Like, how do you explain to somebody, oh yeah, I just need you to come with me, I'll give you some money using my fiance's card, and just come with me to dump off her car? You didn't ask like, oh, where is Tiffany? Oh, what happened to Tiffany? Why are we just dumping her car off here? Does she know about it? And then what, weeks went by, you knew this woman was missing, you haven't heard from her, no sign of anything, her family asks you about her, and you're just like, she's no longer with us? Like, you're telling me this man didn't know that Tiffany was dead? Please be so for real. He absolutely should have gotten guilty for that charge, for concealing her death. If I was on that jury, there would be no reasonable doubt for me. There is not a doubt in my mind that that man didn't help dismember her body, help conceal her death, and then carried that secret for weeks. There's just no way. And I don't like, what loyalty did he owe Reggie for him to just sit there and conceal it and just hold it to himself? That makes no sense to me. So yeah, the jury got docked a bunch of points for that. The judge as well. I feel like, I don't know if that's how it works, but I feel like if the jury finds somebody not guilty and the judge thinks that they are, they should just be able to be like, no, actually, no, he's guilty. Like, I feel like the judge should just get final say. But that could be bad, because what if he was like, I don't think so, and then he didn't find him guilty? Ugh, the court is so hard. But even though I do appreciate them finding Jeremy guilty of theft by taking, he only got 10 years for that crime. The maximum sentencing for that crime is 20 years. And due to the nature and the whole case surrounding this, he definitely should have gotten the maximum, because you weren't just like stealing somebody's car. He stole a murdered woman's car with the person that murdered the woman. Like, let's be so for real. He should have gotten 20 years. But yeah, I guess the only redeeming quality about the judge and the jury is the fact that they found Reggie guilty and sentenced him 3 consecutive life sentences plus 80 years. Like, that man is never seeing freedom again, ever in his life. That's so beautiful. But I just feel like Jeremy got off way too easy. Like, he should have gotten 20 years. So everybody's getting a C+. That's it. You get the plus because of Reggie, I guess. But you're getting a C because of everything else. Like, those were not smart decisions, in my opinion. But regardless of everything, these 2 men will spend a majority of what's left of their lives in prison, and deservedly so. I really don't understand why Jeremy decided to be an accomplice to murder. Maybe he really needed the money. Maybe he's just sick in the head, just as sick as Reggie. But it just blows my mind how someone can throw their life away for someone that they barely know. And especially for someone so awful as Reggie. I'm sure that man told you that he murdered this woman, and you just decided to go along with, like, that's insane. It's just safe to say that we all know that they are going to have the most agonizingly lonely and miserable seconds, minutes, days, hours, weeks, years in prison. Deservedly so. Justifiably so. And for Reggie, I don't even want to waste that much time on him, because he thinks in his little brain that he's so powerful and so important when he really isn't. At one point during the years that he spent in jail, he borrowed one of the prisoners' phone calls. I guess when it was their time to call, he asked for his chance on the phone, because I guess that prisoner wasn't going to call anybody. And he used that time to try to throw off the officers, to try to throw off their investigation. He spoke with somebody on the other line, and he alluded to the idea that Tiffany was alive, saying that she was being held captive somewhere underground. So he was telling that person to go give her cans of food. And he basically knew that law enforcement officers would be listening on the call. So he thought that they would like waste time trying to go figure out where this location is and try to throw them off their track. It's just so demented and crazy to me. That man is so sick. He's so disgusting. Like, he thinks like he's playing a game, like he's some sort of criminal mastermind. It's so disgusting, so sad, so embarrassing, truly. And he thinks that gatekeeping the location of Tiffany's death and her body, or having any information surrounding what happened that night, gives him this importance and power over her body and her family. But it doesn't. At the end of the day, it does not. It just makes Reggie a loser. Tiffany's family will always be okay. They have her spirit, her legacy, her impact, her children, and more importantly, they have each other. At the end of the day, they have everything that Reggie wishes he had. All he has is a cage and nothing but his own demons to keep him company. And that's the true definition of powerless and pitiful. And before I'm really done, shame on the uncle and the half-brother and the cousin, all of these people for not speaking up and telling law enforcement that Tiffany was murdered. I guess the only redeeming quality they have is their integrity and deciding to take the stand to testify against Reggie. But honestly, that isn't enough, and it never will be. I don't really care if they were roped into Reggie's crimes on day 1 or day 100. They had every single day and every opportunity to go to law enforcement and report Tiffany's murder and possibly bring her family closure a lot sooner than they needed to. In my opinion, it doesn't matter that they chose to do the right thing in the very end, because that's what it was, the very end. Anybody with a heart, with real empathy, and any real care for human life would have told authorities what they knew the second they found out. And I hope their actions haunts them for the rest of their lives. And that is the end of this week's episode, guys. My sources for this week's case have been 11alive.com, facebook.com, fox5atlanta.com, services.gdc.ga.com, timesherald.com, and True Crime Network on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Please remember to do the right thing. If there's anything I want you to take from this case, it's to do the right thing. Be good people. Protect yourselves. Protect your bodies. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate all the support you guys have been showing the show. Please don't forget to rate, subscribe, like, follow, comment, all of the great things. I hope to see you guys all next week as we put the Mer in Murder. Bye.